life appeared on our planet more than 3.5 billion years ago. This life endured extreme conditions, from periods where ice extended to the equator to sweltering periods without ice at the poles. The tropical forests of these geological eras have become today's habitat of rainer. At times, the sea level exceeded the present level by 200 meters, 650 feet, transforming the continents into archipelagos. Then, it dropped 100 meters, 330 feet, below the present level, creating stretches of land that are now submerged. The continents moved closer together, and then further apart. Animals from 600 million years ago seem like creatures from a science fiction movie. Although dinosaurs are the undisputed stars of the Mesozoic period, we often forget that 400 million years before their existence, a multitude of animals preceded them. Their universe changed constantly due to climatic changes, food scarcity, or the arrival of new predators. Most species failed to adapt and became extinct. However, they left their traces on Earth in the form of fossils, providing a detailed picture of what life was like before the dinosaurs. Dear traveler, good morning. Today, we embark on a distant journey into the heart of the Proterozoic and Paleozoic eras, more than 400 million years ago, before the reign of the dinosaurs. This journey will reveal surprising and exciting animals and show us a planet devastated by the worst extinction events in history. But before we begin this incredible adventure, remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss anything. Thank you all, and have a good trip. Let's go back in time, far, far before the era of the dinosaurs, when Earth was a massive snowball, completely frozen and covered with glaciers from the poles to the tropics. Volcanic eruptions released large quantities of CO2, creating a greenhouse effect that allowed the planet to warm up. The ice melted, and different land masses came together to form a supercontinent called Rodinia. This supercontinent was surrounded by a single ocean known as Morovia. Scientists use the appearance and disappearance of animals to divide Earth's evolutionary history into periods, which are then grouped into eras. The last 635 million years are divided into 4 such eras. Our journey begins in the Ediacaran period, which lasted from 635 to 542 million years ago. This period marks the end of the late Proterozoic era and the beginning of aquatic fauna's history. On the seafloor of Morovia, bacteria and microbes brought by rain began to take life. In 1946, Australian geologist Reg Sprigg was having lunch in the hills of Ediacara, Australia, when he noticed strange jellyfish-shaped imprints in 600-million-year-old rocks. He had just made one of the most important fossil discoveries of all time, the Dickinsonia. Paleontologists estimate, based on fossils found in Australia and Russia, that the oldest animal lived in the sea some 560 million years ago. This soft-bodied creature, Dickinsonia, was oval and covered with grooves formed by sections of its body. Though it could grow up to 1.4 meters, 4.6 feet, long, it was as thin as a sheet of cigarette paper, measuring only a few millimeters thick. Scientists debated whether it was an animal, a plant, or a fungus. In 2018, a breakthrough discovery found molecules of fat in Australian fossils, an indicator specific to multicellular animals. However, this discovery is still not enough to confirm its classification, as it may be related to jellyfish, sea anemones, or even a giant flattened worm. In 1957, 3 English schoolchildren found a leaf-shaped fossil in a forest in Leicestershire. They brought it to a geologist at the local university named Trevor Mason. The fossil resembled a fern, but discoveries of similar fossils in formerly submerged rocks indicated that it was not a plant. This animal lived in deep waters where light was too scarce for plants to grow. Other specimens have been found in Canada, Russia, and Australia. This creature, called Charnia, had no skeleton or shell, and its body was soft. Most fossils measured around 20 centimeters, 8 inches, long, but a related species found in Canada, Charnia warti, reached up to 2 meters, 6.5 feet, in length. It likely anchored itself to the seabed with a disc or spike, growing like a leaf on its stem. Without a mouth or intestine, it likely absorbed nutrients from the water, similar to its modern relatives, the crinids. Another fossil from the Ediacaran period, also found in the Ediacara Hills, is Kimberella. This animal measured up to 15 centimeters, 6 inches, long, 5 centimeters, 2 inches, wide, and 4 centimeters, 2 inches, high. It had a single muscular foot for movement, and a soft but protective shell to retract into when threatened. Certain fossilized tracks show evidence of a dentition pattern, leading scientists to believe that Kimberella may have been an ancestor of snails. It shares many characteristics with modern mollusks, making it the oldest known member of this group. Paleontologists also discovered another Ediacaran organism, Triberchidium. This creature lived in shallow waters, measuring around 4 centimeters, 2 inches, in diameter. It was buried in the seabed, leaving only a few millimeters of its hemispherical body exposed. Its unique three-groove pattern on the top helped create whirlpools that directed water to 3 central wells, allowing it to extract food particles. Researchers believe its closest modern relatives could be anemones or starfish. The first known animal to develop a shell was Cloudina, a widespread organism whose fossils have been found across Africa, Asia, North and South America, Europe, and Antarctica. Cloudina's shell consisted of a stack of open cones forming a tube, corresponding to its living space. The largest specimens measured up to 15 centimeters, 6 inches, long and 6 millimeters wide. However, little is known about its feeding habits or way of life. Some fossilized Cloudina shells have holes drilled in them, suggesting the first evidence of predation, a sign that the great evolutionary struggle between predators and prey had begun. As the Proterozoic era ended, the supercontinent Rodinia broke apart, forming several continents. Around 560 million years ago, Laurentia, Siberia, and the massive Gondwana became distinct landmasses. Laurentia corresponds to present-day North America, excluding New England and Newfoundland, but including parts of Ireland and Scotland. Siberia represents modern-day Russia, while Gondwana included Africa, South America, Antarctica, India, China, Southeast Asia, Australia, and Southern Europe. By 520 million years ago, a new continent, Baltica, separated from Laurentia. Baltica corresponds to northern Europe today. The opening of the Iapetus Ocean further separated Laurentia from both Baltica and Gondwana. With the Cambrian period beginning, so did the Paleozoic era, bringing an explosion of new marine life. The most famous fossil site from the Cambrian period is the Burgess Shale in British Columbia, discovered in 1909 by paleontologist Charles Doolittle Walcott. This deposit contains exceptionally well-preserved remains of a diverse array of invertebrates that thrived 520 million years ago. If you had been diving during the Cambrian period, you would have encountered bizarre creatures such as Hallucigenia. In 1977, British paleontologist Simon Conway Morris identified an exceptionally odd fossil. This tiny, soft-bodied creature, Hallucigenia, measured only 2 centimeters, less than 1 inch in length. It had a soft trunk covered in spines, 10 pairs of elongated legs, and 3 pairs of front legs that were thinner and possibly feathered. These front limbs may have functioned as sensory organs or helped capture food from the water. Its head contained a mouth surrounded by teeth, and further back in its throat, a set of needle-like teeth suggested a 2-step chewing process. Advanced electron microscopy revealed that Hallucigenia also had a pair of dark spots on its head, likely representing primitive eyes. With these findings, scientists linked it to modern velvet worms, onychophorans, which are relatives of arthropods such as crustaceans and insects. Let's continue our discovery of strange Cambrian marine creatures with Coelopod Nectaris tx. Although very little is known about this animal, fossils collected from the Burgess shell provide invaluable insight into the anatomy and lifestyle of this primitive creature. Its cylindrical body, soft and flattened when viewed from above, was 2 to 5 centimeters long or up to 2 inches. It had 2 dorsal lateral fins resembling a hybrid of a ray and a squid. These probably allowed it to swim quickly and agilely in the water. Also, it had 2 long tentacles in the extension of its rigid head. The Nectocaris is a singular creature because it is endowed with a pair of rod-shaped eyes. From the base of its mouth, a sort of flexible cone opens onto an internal cavity containing a pair of gills. This chimney is reminiscent of the siphon, a tubular organ of today's cephalopods, which they use to swim backward. Scientists assume that Nectaris used it to propel itself through the water. It probably fed on small organisms such as plankton and bacteria while living in shallow waters near the shore. All of these anatomical features are consistent with the hypothesis that Nectocaris is the ancestor of octopuses and squids. Here is one of the most fascinating animals of the Cambrian, Opabinia. Its anatomy is quite strange. Its body, 7 centimeters or 3 inches long, soft, and segmented, gives it a shrimp-like appearance. It had 5 eyes perched on small stalks, 2 in front and 3 in the back, as well as a flexible proboscis ending in a kind of claw, which was probably used to bring food to the mouth in the absence of powerful jaws. It had to feed on soft food by extracting worms from the ground. Opabinia was devoid of legs. The 15 segments of the body were bordered by articulated lobes, which perhaps supported crawling and swimming. The caudal fin, in the shape of a fan, reminds a little of that of the lobster. This one must have helped it to move and to direct itself. Many scientists saw in Opabinia a unique specimen, but the careful comparison of numerous living or fossil species led researchers to relate it to other animals with soft and segmented bodies, even by far to arthropods. Let's make room now for the Cambrian sea monster, Anomalocaris. Its body resembles that of a giant shrimp, since it is up to 1 meter long or 3 feet. It was a formidable hunter, the largest aquatic predator of this period. Armed with spikes, the mouth organs hang under the head. Its round mouth, flattened and composed of plates, looks like a camera shutter. Its prey of choice was probably trilobites because paleontologists have observed bite marks on some specimens corresponding to its jaw. However, paleontologist James Whitey Hagedorn suggested that this predator was unable to eat hard-shelled prey, so Anomalocaris may have fed on trilobites during the molting period, but it was certainly more of a threat to worms. From Greenland to Australia, a few dozen specimens have been found in Cambrian rocks. The shape of the mouthparts varies from one species to another. It is assumed that they differed in their diet. Some appeared to have specialized in predation, while others scavenged the muddy seabed or filtered water to capture tiny creatures. With a diameter of 2 centimeters or 1 inch, the compound rod-shaped eyes were as large as any insect's and had up to 16,000 facets. Even after the appearance of fish, Anomalocaris remained one of the largest marine creatures until the Ordovician period. About the size of an inch, Pikaia was not particularly large, not exceeding 5 centimeters in length. It is one of the oldest known species of the chordate group, to which all vertebrates belong, including man. Pikaia looked like an eel. It did not have a skeleton, but a notochord, a flexible cartilaginous structure that ran along its spindle-shaped body like a spinal column. 100 myomeres, small muscular packets separated by connective tissue, allowed Pikaia to swim while undulating. The intestines of certain specimens contain fossilized mud, an indication that it grazed the seafloor. By the presence of muscles, nerves, and blood vessels, scientists evoke a distant relationship with fish, reptiles, and other animals with skeletons. However, certain aspects of its morphology still remain enigmatic. For example, those two long tentacles at the top of the head, and those multiple pairs of small appendages just below on the ventral side. Milocunmingia is also part of the group of chordates. Smaller than Pikaia, its body does not exceed the size of a paper clip. Their fossils come from the Mount Chengjiang shell in Shenghong, southern China. It resembles a fish with fins, muscles, a skull, and even gills. Many researchers consider it to be the first known vertebrate, although it does not have a bony structure but a soft cartilage skeleton. Thus, during the Cambrian, life took off in an unprecedented way. This period was a springboard for the explosion of aquatic animal diversity observed during the Ordovician period. The Ordovician period spanned 65 million years, beginning 500 million years ago. It is the period of greatest continental fragmentation in the Paleozoic. The beginning of the closure of the Iapetus Ocean brings Laurentia closer to Baltica. The Caledonian orogeny then takes place, which is at the origin of the old masses of Europe and North America, including the Appalachians. The opening of the Reich Ocean separates Avalonia from Gondwana. Avalonia, named after the mythical island of Avalon, where Excalibur, King Arthur's sword, was forged, included England, Wales, southeastern Ireland, northern France, Nova Scotia, and New England. As for the Tornquist Sea, it separates Baltica and Avalonia. This period saw a new explosion of animal diversity. The fossil records show an increasing number of deep-water species, plankton, animals swimming in the open ocean, and predators well equipped to catch them. Built up by sponges and other creatures, the reefs grew and multiplied, providing shelter for more animals. At the same time, some took their first steps on land, leaving their footprints on the shore. The vegetation at that time was mostly moss and lichen. Much of the primitive fauna lived in the shallow seas close to shore, but for any animal that could swim far enough, the open ocean offered a vast territory, new food resources, and perhaps fewer predators. Along with crustaceans and other arthropods, nautiloids, a mollusk cousin to squid and octopus, were present worldwide, as proven by fossils found in rocks of the Ordovician, 470 million years old. They are animals that gradually adapted to life in deep water. It is thought that the first nautiloids were planktivores that went up and down in the water, filling the cavities of their shells with gas and then emptying them. To do this, they modified the chemical concentration of their body fluids. The increase of this concentration transfers the water of the shell towards the body, thus filling it with gas. When the quantity of gas in the shell rises, the animal also rises, and conversely. Then, the nautiloids gain mobility. They move by projecting a jet of water through a hole close to the head and hunted with the help of their tentacles, which carried the food to the hard beak. While most had shells only about 10 centimeters long, others were huge and could reach up to 6 meters or 20 feet. At the time, they were at the top of the aquatic food chain. Damaged fossil shells show that the nautiloids probably attacked each other. Traces of color preserved on some fossils even suggest that some species practiced camouflage. Indeed, on the upper half of the shell, gray and brown bands allowed the animal to blend into the dark waters. Aquatic ancestors of millipedes, euthocarcinids are arthropods with an external skeleton, a pointed tail, and an articulated body with up to 28 pairs of legs. About the size of a large shrimp of about 10 centimeters or 4 inches, they look more like a cross between a lobster and a woodlouse. The rocks that contain the oldest recorded fossils of euthocarcinids date from the end of the Cambrian. Scientists suggest that they were the first animals to venture onto land, where the shoreline was lined with microbes and bacteria, a meal served on a platter if you could reach it at low tide. Moreover, venturing out of the water off a way out of predator attacks. A major extinction event occurred at the end of the Ordovician, marked by the disappearance of 85% of existing species. It affected bottom-dwelling organisms such as triath and brachiopods, as well as pelagic forms such as nautiloids. This mass extinction has been linked to the glaciation occurring at the time. The South Pole was then located on the current Niger, and a large part of Gondwana was covered by a thick ice cap twice as large as the current Antarctic ice cap. As a result, sea levels dropped by 50 m, or 165 feet, drying out the shallow seas where life once flourished. In addition, an anoxic event, which is an extreme decrease in oxygen levels in seawater, destabilized the ecosystem of marine life. What was an ocean teeming with life is now an ocean of desolation. This crisis lasted for 1 to 2 million years, to give way to the Sauron period 435 million years ago. At the beginning of this third Paleozoic period, which began 444 million years ago and lasted for more than 28 million years, the melting of the polar ice caps caused a general rise in the levels of the oceans and shallow seas that cover the continental shelves. After the closure of the Tornquist Ocean, the Avallonian landmass welded to the Laurentia and Baltica landmasses. Thus, the continent of the Old Red Sandstone, abbreviated CVG, is formed, today variously called La Europa, Euramerica, and La Russia. The immense continent Gondwana is then separated from the CVG by the Rheic Ocean and the Paleotethys. The Salon marks the beginning of the age of fishes, with the development of agnatic vertebrates, that is to say, fishes without jaws possessing a bony external armor named ostracoderms. However, jawed vertebrates, otherwise known as naesto, which appeared in the Ordovician, are also present. It was in the Saluan that the terrestrialization of invertebrates, i.e., alodes arthropods and gastropods, occurred. The oldest plant macrofossils are from the Saluan, but they are rare. After the mass extinctions of the late Ordovician, life proliferated and diversified again. Coral reefs are numerous on the island arc bordering the Panthalassa and the Paleotus, as well as on the bottom of shallow seas. The generalized warm climate allows them to largely exceed the intertropical zone. The corals are mainly tetracoral arids, also called rugose corals, and tabulate. The emblematic animals of the Curan are the urids. Already present in the Ordovician, their history continued, and they were never so diversified both in shape and size. The most important event among vertebrates is the appearance of the jaw, formed from the second bronchial arc of the agnatha. The first jawed vertebrates or nace were the acanthodians, with spiny fins, and the placoderms, whose front part of the body was enclosed in a bony carapace. Appearing in the lower Curan, the platter was the first vertebrate with movable jaws and teeth. It also inaugurated an even number of fins, which later evolved into limbs and terrestrial vertebrates. Specimens of a 380-million-year-old species found in the Goo Formation, a fossil site in Western Australia, contain fossilized embryos. The platter is thus one of the first known vertebrates to have produced well-developed young instead of laying eggs. But the most obvious and strange thing about platter is the bony plates that cover the head and upper body. This armor proves that the Silurian seas were a merciless environment where fishes devoured each other, not to mention the threat of invertebrate predators such as nautiloids and sea scorpions. The platter waited for its prey, lurking on the sea floor or hunting in the sediment. Dunkleosteus stands out as the largest platter, being able to reach up to 6 m long and equipped with jaws capable of exerting a force of 500 kilograms. Other specimens, on the contrary, fed on marine plants. For example, Titanic, one of the most impressive, reached 8 meters, 25 feet, in length and weighed 1 ton. It was deprived of teeth, no doubt filtering plankton in suspension in the water, like the current whale shark. Nevertheless, giant placoderms were rare, and the majority of them measured between 30 centimeters and 1 m, 10 into 3 feet. Distributed throughout the world, placoderms lived in freshwater or in the sea. When they became extinct at the end of the Devonian, they left the oceans to two groups: the bony skeleton fishes, to which most of today's fishes belong, including the ancestors of terrestrial vertebrates, and the soft cartilage sharks and rays. According to acanthodian fossils, sharks, along with their cousins, the rays, are the descendants of this group of known vertebrates, which appeared some 400 million years ago. Acanthodians are characterized by long bony spines located at the front of their pectoral fins, but also on their dorsal and anal fins. Their body was covered with tiny and quadrangular scales. Like sharks, they have a heterocercal tail, which means that it has two unequal lobes. Some acanthodians were predators who had large eyes to spot prey. Others, without teeth, were content to filter water. These predators flourished all over the world, colonizing seas and rivers, only to become extinct in the Permian around 250 million years before our era. The invasion of the continents continued with the appearance of the first terrestrial arthropods and larger plants like Konya. Terrestrial life was limited to a narrow wetland band around rivers and lagoons. The best candidates for the title of land animal pioneers are the ancestors of today's millipedes and scolopendra. The mopod group Nomadesis pumani was a relatively small creature measuring just over 2 centimeters long. However, its most striking feature was its large number of legs. It had up to 40 pairs. The holes running along its body allowed it to breathe, bringing oxygen into its cells. They also attest that the animal lived on land. The Devonian period, located between the Curan and the Carboniferous, extends from 418 to 359 million years before our era. The Devonian period is marked by the disappearance of the Rick Ocean, allowing the supercontinent Gondwana to continue its slow drift towards La Russia. It was during this period that the transition from fish to tetrapods took place, leading to the colonization of land by vertebrates. This transition was disrupted by the third great biological crisis in Earth's history 374 million years ago, marked by various extinction events over 3 million years. These extinctions were caused by climatic warming, extraterrestrial impacts, and intense volcanic activity under present-day Siberia. The combination of these catastrophic events weakened the biosphere, causing widespread devastation and mass extinctions, known as the Kelwasser event. Substances such as metals, silver, gold, chromium, iron, magnesium, and others, contaminate the ocean. The marine fauna is devastated, and gases are released into the atmosphere, emitting carbon dioxide in massive quantities. Slowly, the air becomes loaded with greenhouse gases, temperatures rise, and ocean currents stop. The water reaches more than 30 degrees Celsius 86 degrees Fahrenheit at the equator. It is desolation. The aquatic environment is dying. 250,000 years after the first eruption, the Earth continues to pour magma. The atmosphere, saturated with carbon dioxide, leads to vegetation exploding and invading the surface of the Earth. Leaves have been falling for several thousand years, rotting on the ground, and forming the first layer of humus on the planet. This nutrient-rich soil is carried by the rains and flows into the seas, absorbed by the algae. The algae grow uncontrollably, stealing all the oxygen and suffocating aquatic life. The coasts become infested and saturated with plants. These eruptions, which had been occurring at sea, now begin to occur on land. The air becomes charged with sulfur dioxide, methane, and carbon dioxide. Huge eruptions take place, sending gigantic clouds of ash several kilometers high into the atmosphere. The planet is emptied of its entrails. Chaos reigns on Earth. The sky darkens, and burning ashes fall on the continents. Fires break out worldwide, and the sun can no longer penetrate the thick atmospheric layers. A volcanic winter ensues. Temperatures, once around 30 degrees Celsius 86 degrees Fahrenheit, drop by 20 degrees Celsius 68 degrees Fahrenheit. The plankton, the foundation of the oceanic food chain, is eradicated, and fish eggs are decimated. The catastrophe unfolds, but salvation comes from trees producing oxygen. Temperatures eventually stabilize, the seasons reappear, and life diversifies once more. This extinction event wiped out between 50% and 70% of species on Earth. At the beginning of the Carboniferous period, the continents Laurasia and Gondwana reformed into a single landmass, Little Pangaea. To the east, the ocean surrounding Little Pangaea was called Prototethys. These continental masses were encircled by the vast superocean Panthalassa. This movement of tectonic plates caused ocean levels to rise, submerging large areas of plant life beneath the sea. More fish with bones appeared, yet the oceans remained dominated by ammonites and conodonts, swarming in the depths. Lush, immense swamps characterized this era, hosting a variety of arthropods that reigned supreme. During the Devonian, tetrapods and amphibians emerged, as did the first reptiles on land. Devonian ferns gradually gave way to bark-covered trees and seed plants. During fires or floods, these trees and plants were buried. Their decomposition, preserved under layers of organic matter, eventually transformed into coal over millions of years, a process known as carbonization. The conditions were so favorable for coal formation that the period was named the Carboniferous. The Carboniferous rainforests were dominated by a group of vascular plants, the most common being Lepidodendron. This majestic plant could grow up to 30 meters, 100 feet, tall, with a trunk reaching a meter in diameter. Initially growing rapidly and unbranched, once it reached the canopy, it opened into a crown of branches bearing cones filled with spores. Another terrestrial plant from this period, Glossopteris, was found in fossilized remains across South America, Southern Africa, Madagascar, India, and Australia. Despite being a major coal constituent, little is known about it. The Carboniferous period was also an era of giant insects. Dragonflies reached the size of modern birds, cockroaches grew as large as mice, and scorpions exceeded 50 centimeters, 20 inches, in length. However, the largest invertebrate of this period was Arthropleura, a giant millipede relative. Though no complete fossils have been found, scientists estimate its length at up to 2 meters, 7 feet, and width at 50 centimeters, 20 inches. Covered in a thick, heavy carapace of chitin plates, it likely lived in tropical swamps filled with tree ferns and other primitive plants. Among the early amphibians, the discovery of Balaenopteran woody in the Scottish East Kirk deposit revealed an animal that may have sought refuge in hollow fossilized tree trunks. This salamander-like creature had a rounded skull, an elongated 20 centimeters, 8-inch, body, and robust limbs adapted for terrestrial locomotion. It had large eye openings on the skull's back, useful for detecting its surroundings. Its carnivorous, insectivorous diet was evident in its 40 upper jaw teeth compared to only 20 in the lower jaw. Hylonomus is recognized as the oldest known reptile. Fossils discovered over 150 years ago in Nova Scotia were found inside a hollow fossilized tree stump, indicating it had evolved to live on land. Measuring about 25 centimeters, 10 inches, long, including its tail, it roamed Carboniferous forests hunting insects and millipedes. The emergence of Hylonomus marked a turning point, as reptiles developed amniotic eggs, freeing them from dependence on water. With this, vertebrates colonized the land, and reptiles would dominate for the next 200 million years. Another remarkable insect of the Carboniferous was Meganeura, a gigantic dragonfly-like creature. With a wingspan of 70 centimeters, 30 inches, and a body length of 30 centimeters, 10 inches, it rivaled the size of a modern pigeon. It hunted small insects over rivers and lakes, relying on its keen eyesight. The reason behind the enormous size of Carboniferous animals remains debated, but the most accepted theory is the high oxygen concentration in the air, rising to 35%, compared to today's 21%. This oxygen surplus, generated by the planet's dense vegetation, fueled the growth of insects, amphibians, and invertebrates. As the Carboniferous gave way to the Permian period about 295 million years ago, landmasses merged further. Siberia and Kazakhstan welded to Gondwana, forming the supercontinent Pangaea. The once swampy, lush Carboniferous landscape gave way to vast arid deserts and towering mountain ranges. Temperatures fluctuated drastically, varying from 0 degrees Celsius (32 degrees Fahrenheit) to 40 degrees Celsius (104 degrees Fahrenheit) within a single day. The South Pole remained frozen, while other regions became drier, reshaping terrestrial ecosystems. Reptiles became dominant, gradually replacing amphibians. One major amphibian of the Permian was Archaeops, a large predator reaching 2 meters, 7 feet, in length. Its massive, flat skull and sharp teeth suited its semi-aquatic, semi-terrestrial lifestyle. However, it faced a formidable predator, Dimetrodon. Though resembling a dinosaur, Dimetrodon was actually a synapsid, an early relative of mammals. It included species ranging from 60 centimeters to nearly 5 meters, 25 inches to 16 feet, in length, with the largest weighing up to 300 kilograms, 660 pounds. Its back featured a distinctive sail supported by elongated vertebrae, possibly for thermoregulation, mating displays, or intimidation. The Permian period ended in catastrophe 252 million years ago, the greatest mass extinction in Earth's history. Approximately 96% of marine species and 75% of terrestrial species vanished, including nearly all reptiles. Possible causes include ocean anoxia, massive Siberian volcanic eruptions, drastic sea level drops, or a combination of these. Fossilized pollen grains found in Australia contain high nickel levels, suggesting volcanic activity poisoned plant life, leading to ecosystem collapse. Rising global temperatures, reaching 50 degrees Celsius (122 degrees Fahrenheit), triggered methane release from the oceans, further exacerbating climate change. This extinction marked the transition from the Paleozoic to the Mesozoic era. Some species, known as disaster fauna, survived, such as Lystrosaurus, a mammal-like reptile resembling a dog crossed with a boar. As life continued to evolve, new species emerged, and soon, dinosaurs would rise to dominance throughout the Mesozoic era.